Starbucks finally got caught. They are paying $38.9 million, and if you have ever worked a closing shift, you probably already know why. Investigators found more than 500,000 violations of one city's scheduling law across more than 300 stores, affecting over 15,000 workers. It is the largest worker protection settlement in New York City history. And here is the strange part. While that check was being written, Starbucks was selling more coffee than it had in years. Revenue hit $9.5 billion in the quarter ending March 29th, up 9%. Global comparable sales rose 6.2%, and most of that came from people walking through the door rather than paying more. The stock touched a 52-week high of $108.88. Brian Niccol, the chairman and chief executive, called it the turn in the turnaround. So how does a company get punished and rewarded in the same breath? To understand that, you have to go back to one store in Buffalo and to a fight that has now lasted more than 4 years. In late 2021, baristas at a Starbucks in Buffalo, New York, voted to unionize. It was the first company-owned store in decades to do it. What happened next was not subtle. A National Labor Relations Board judge, Michael Rosas, described the company's conduct as egregious and widespread misconduct. In the first 3 years of organizing, workers and their union filed more than 700 charges of labor rights violations. An analysis by the Economic Policy Institute found that to be the highest number ever recorded against a single company in a single campaign. The Labor Board issued more than 135 complaints. Judges handed down more than 60 decisions against Starbucks. 7 workers in Memphis were fired after talking to a television crew about organizing their store. A federal court ordered them reinstated. Starbucks fought that order all the way to the Supreme Court, and in 2024, it won. 8-1. The decision made it harder for the Labor Board to shield workers anywhere in the country while cases crawl through the system. That is the part people miss. Starbucks did not only fight its own baristas. It rewrote the odds for everyone else's. Then there are the schedules. New York City's Department of Consumer and Worker Protection spent 3 years investigating, and what it found was not a paperwork problem. Most Starbucks employees in the city never received a regular schedule at all. The company routinely cut hours by more than 15%. It denied workers the chance to pick up open shifts while it kept hiring new people. Thousands of baristas were held in part-time work they never chose. The union says the average unionized barista works about 19 hours a week. 20 is the number you need to qualify for benefits. 1 hour and you are outside the door. Most of those workers will now receive $50 for every week they worked between July 2021 and July 2024. Someone who stayed a year and a half gets around $3,900. Starbucks called the law complex, said even a swapped shift can trigger a violation, and stressed that the payouts were about compliance rather than unpaid wages. Mayor Eric Adams put it more plainly: if you violate our workers' rights, you will pay the price. The settlement landed on December 1st, hours before Senator Bernie Sanders walked a picket line outside a Brooklyn store. Because by then, the baristas were already out. And to understand why, you only need one number. In 2024, Brian Niccol was paid $95.8 million. The median Starbucks employee made $14,674. That is a ratio of 6,666 to 1, the widest gap in the entire S&P 500, according to the Institute for Policy Studies. It is also, and this is the part that sticks, about $1,000 below the federal poverty line for a single person. The person handing you your coffee is statistically poorer than the government's definition of poor. On November 13th, 2025, Red Cup Day, one of the busiest sales days of the entire year, they walked out. They called it the Red Cup Rebellion. It started with roughly 1,000 workers at 65 stores. By December, more than 4,500 baristas at 230 locations had joined. It ran for 131 days, the longest strike in the company's history. Starbucks said more than 99% of its coffee houses stayed open, and that it recorded its strongest Red Cup Day ever. Both things are true. A strike does not have to close a company to cost it something. 2 months earlier, Starbucks had announced a $1 billion restructuring. 400 to 500 North American stores closed. 900 corporate employees lost their jobs, on top of 1,100 cut earlier that year. The company said it shut locations where it could not see a path to financial performance, and where it could not create the environment customers expect. If you are the person who spent 4 years learning every regular's order at one of those stores, that sentence does not help much. Then, in November 2025, the board quietly dissolved the committee it had created 2 years earlier for the specific purpose of overseeing labor relations. It took about 3 months to explain why, and the explanation arrived as a footnote about simplifying oversight. In February, the New York State Comptroller, the New York City Comptroller, a British pension fund, and 3 investment groups wrote to shareholders, urging them to vote against 2 directors. Their argument was not moral, it was financial. A turnaround built entirely on the connection between a barista and a customer cannot survive a permanent war with the baristas. While all of that burned, the company was redrawing its map. Starbucks agreed to sell 60% of its China retail business to Boyu Capital at a valuation of about $4 billion. The deal closed at the end of March. Nearly 8,000 company-run coffeehouses in China became licensed stores overnight. Starbucks kept 40%, kept the brand, and kept the royalties. After almost 30 years of building coffee culture in a country that barely drank the stuff, and after losing ground to faster, cheaper local rivals like Luckin, it handed over the keys and called it a partnership. Meanwhile, at home, the coffee kept getting more expensive. Starbucks prices climbed roughly 39% between 2014 and 2024. Green coffee costs have swung by nearly $1 a pound in a single year. A grande iced latte runs about $5.25, and a smaller cup at Dutch Bros costs less while giving you more. Dutch Bros grew revenue 31% in a single quarter and is opening at least 185 new shops this year. That is the quiet threat. Not that people hate Starbucks, but that they are no longer sure why they are paying extra for it. If you like stories like this one, subscribing genuinely helps us keep making them. And here is where it gets uncomfortable because the turnaround is real. Transactions in the United States rose for a second straight quarter. All 10 of the largest international markets posted positive comparable sales for the first time in 9 quarters. The company raised its full-year guidance. Analysts raised their targets. Customers came back for the condiment bars, the ceramic mugs, the names written on cups by hand, the seating that had quietly disappeared. So look closely at what Starbucks is actually doing to win those customers back. Investing in staffing and scheduling, adding hours, tying quarterly bonuses to how each individual coffeehouse performs, putting enough people behind the bar that most stores now serve a cafe order in under 4 minutes. Now read the union's demands. 3 baristas on the floor instead of 2, open hours offered to existing workers before new ones are hired, schedules you can actually plan a life around. It is very nearly the same list. Starbucks is delivering the union's contract everywhere except on paper. Because on paper, there still is not one. More than 4 years after Buffalo, not a single Starbucks store in the United States has a ratified first contract. The union won 125 more elections in 2025 alone. It now represents more than 12,000 baristas at over 700 locations, and new stores are still voting to join. It has already lowered its own demands from a $20 starting wage to $17, from 5% annual raises to 4%. Bargaining restarted in April. In June, the labor board found the company had broken the law again, this time by questioning Seattle workers about whether they planned to strike. So did Starbucks finally get what it deserved? Partly. It paid $38.9 million for the schedules it shredded. It paid $1 billion to unwind stores it should never have opened. It sold control of its second largest market. It sat back down at a table it had spent years walking away from. But none of that came from a boardroom, and none of it came from a change of heart. Every dollar was pried loose by people earning $14,000 a year, standing outside in November, holding a paper sign in the cold. That is the real story of this turnaround. The company got its record quarter, the baristas got a check and a promise. Only one of those has actually been delivered. And the next time someone hands you a cup with your name scrawled across it in green marker, remember that the smile costs nothing. The coffee costs $6, and the schedule behind it took 500,000 violations and a 131-day strike to fix. If you like this video, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. There's a lot more coming.